Okay, so now let's go to interpreting our motion graphs. Kasi ang graphs po ay important actually when you are studying motion. So let's have this one where you have a distance and time graph. So as you can see here, you have along the y-axis, you have the distance, and along the x-axis, you have the time. So here we have certain questions that we asked. So the question here is, the graph on the right shows the motion of a car. For ease, we will assume that it is consistently moving towards the east. So the reason for this is that we want to keep the displacement along a certain path lang siya, no? Along a certain direction. So the question that we will ask is, what details regarding the car's motion can we deduce from the graph? Ano ba yung mga bagay-bagay na pwede nating makita dito sa graph na to? First, of course, we know that, okay, position, changing velocity, position. Okay, so the first thing, of course, that you will notice, please, is that, okay, velocity. Velocity, sabi ni Sir Jeffrey. Okay, so the first thing we will notice, please, is that you can actually measure the average velocity for the whole motion, right? So you can start from here, where the car starts at t is equal to 0 and x is equal to 0, and ending here where the time is actually equal to 5 hours, and the distance covered is actually equal to, x is equal to 300. Sorry, naka-miles pa to kasi yung ginamit kong reference nito ay galing sa isang American textbook. So now you have 300 divided by 5, so you can get that essentially the average velocity is around 60 kilometers per hour, right? So you have 300, mag-shortcut na naman po, pasensya na. So we actually have the average should be equal to x total, in this case, over time total. So that would be 300 miles over 5 hours. So this one will be equal to 300 divided by 5 will give you 60 miles per hour. Hindi nga, sorry, hindi kph, but miles per hour. Okay? So that's the first thing that you will see. However, there are certain things that we can also deduce from this graph, which essentially will show us some of the story behind how the car is supposed to have moved. Like, for example, there are certain points in this particular graph where the car had a constant velocity. So ang question ay, nasan po ba na parts ng ating motion nagkaroon ng constant velocity ang ating car? Okay, sabi ni Sir, S to S2. Ay, sa Ma'am Cherry Lead pala, sorry. S to S2 daw, dito. And then, S2 to G. And then, saan pa po? G to B. Naubos na, no? And V to M. So as you can see, there are 3 points where there are 3 parts of the motion of the car where supposedly nagkaroon tayo ng tawag nito, ng constant velocity ng car. However, let's pay attention to the fact na dito sa S2 to SG, meron actually nangyari sa car sa S2 to SG. Itong part na to. Can you tell me what happened here? Okay, so si Sergeant Christopher already answered that from S to S2, the car was not moving. So most probably, ang nangyari dito, yes, it's at rest. So more or less siguro nagkaroon ng stopover yung car after some time. Okay? And then, what you will also note is that if you look at the slope of the graphs ng ating motion, you will notice that the slopes for distance over time is essentially different so that we can actually make a judgment where the velocity is faster. So saan po ba faster ang velocity natin? From S2 to G, from B to G. Okay, so sabi ni Sir John Christopher, steeper slope means faster. So saan po ba yung steeper slope natin? Tanggalin natin yung drawing ko para makita nyo ulit. Okay. Okay, so nasan po ba yung steeper slope natin? Okay, so S2 to G. Okay, so therefore, as you can see, simply by looking at this graph, you can actually develop already a lot of different information na pwede mong magamit in order to analyze the motion of the car. Okay? So this is the first graph that we are going to be doing. There will be a lot more that we will be doing. Okay, so here is a slightly more different graph. And for this graph, what we have is velocity naman ang nandito. This time in the more comfortable meter per second na unit. And we have time expressed also in seconds. So again, let me label this graph first so that we can, so we will start from here. We will call this point A, call this point B, we'll call this point C, and we will call this point D. Okay, so the question is, in which part of the graph is there acceleration? From B lang po ba? Okay, so it's from A to B and C to D. But what we know is that there is actually a difference in the acceleration that occurs from A to B from the acceleration that occurs in C to D. So ang acceleration ng A to B is supposed to be, notice that our value actually increases as we move towards from point A to B. So therefore, we know that the acceleration here is velocity na po to. So nakikita nyo po, nag-i-increase yung ating velocity, di ba? It's increasing. Therefore, we know that the acceleration here should be increasing. The velocity is increasing. So acceleration is positive. So sabi ni Ma'am Sherilyn, nandito na siya sa C and D. So in the case of C and D, what you will notice is that this time the velocity is supposed to be going downward. So therefore, we know that in this case, the acceleration is supposed to be negative. Okay? And then what happens to the B and C? Ano po ang acceleration natin dito? Okay, so the acceleration between points B and C is supposed to be 0. Okay, so in that case, what is happening here is first, our object experiences an increase in its velocity. And then after that, it will maintain a constant velocity. And then after some time, the velocity will start decreasing. Okay, so ano kayang maging ang magandang example ng isang object na gagawa ng ganitong klaseng graph? Okay, thank you, Sir Willie, for the answer. A to B is accelerating while C to D is decelerating. Thank you po. Okay, so ano kayang isang bagay na pwedeng gumawa ng ganitong graph? Okay, so sabi nga ni Sir Jeffrey, one possible example of something doing something like this is perhaps if you have a small inclined plane, kung meron ka pong inclined plane kung saan yung inclined plane mo ay nakaganito. So, if you have a ball dropping through the incline, what happens is the velocity will start increasing first. Upon reaching the bottom, what we expect is for some time, before the frictional effects start to kick in, what will happen is the ball will roll in a constant motion before what happens is it will start slowing down. So, dito ay ang ano ng motion niya, and then what happens is here, it will start slowing down because of the effects of friction. Okay? So, this is an example of what this particular graph can actually be applied to in terms ng isang motion ng isang object. Okay, so it seems like napaka-familiar niya sa mga ganitong graph. Okay, this time, kukuha tayo ng ticker tape. Okay, velocity. Yes, okay. Thank you very much, Sir Billy, ulit. Okay, so now let's look at this one. So the topmost portion of this of this one actually shows you something similar doon sa ticker timer tape na nakikita natin. So as you can see, we have dots representing the motion of an insect. So you will have 0.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So the question is, which of the following graphs below, you have graph A, B, C, D, and E, are the appropriate graphs to be able to describe this one? So ano po yung napapansin natin? What we notice is that if you will look at this graph, you will see that what's happening is you have an increasing distance, di ba? Okay, so this one is x1, this one is x2, this one is x3, this one is x4, this one is x5. So therefore, okay, so sabi nyo ay D. Okay, so ang sabi dito ay D. Pasensya na, may konting delay pala sa ating FB Live, kaya hindi sila masyadong nakakaano ng sagot. Okay, so in any case, what's happening is tawag nito, our insect is actually increasing its distance traveled. Nag-i-increase yung distance traveled ng ating insect over time. And as it does that, what is actually happening is actually ang kanyang velocity is supposed to be increasing. Again, how do we know that the velocity of the insect is increasing? Bakit nga natin alam? Balikan natin yung pinakauna nating discussion. How do we know that the velocity of the insect is increasing? Kasi, okay, so as you will notice, yung space between dots ang nagiging indicator natin that the velocity is increasing. Primarily because you will notice that starting from the first set of dots na x1, and if what we know is yung separation ng ating dots is for equal intervals of time, then what we know is, you will notice please that the distance between dots is also increasing. So larger distance covered means faster, di ba? For the same amount of time, the larger distance covered means that you have an object that is faster. So in this case, because the distance that is being covered by the insect is actually increasing per unit time, then we therefore know that the velocity is increasing. Therefore, the correct answer is letter D. Pero, oo nga, correct answer ang letter D. Pero, bakit hindi pwede si A? Sorry, bakit ko binilugan si A? Okay. Bakit hindi pwede si A? Kasi, in the case of A, you will notice please that for A, yes, it shows a constant velocity. So here, what you have is actually constant velocity. And for B, bakit hindi pwede si B? Bakit hindi pwede si B? Actually, sir, meron tayong acceleration kasi 'di ba? Kung tama yung sagot natin na ano, then what's happening is velocity is increasing, therefore there is acceleration. So sa case ng A to the X ng graph B, okay. Thank you, sir. So in this case, what we have is actually ang graph B shows negative acceleration. So as you can see, the value of acceleration is decreasing here. So hindi siya tama para dito. How about letter C? Bakit hindi tama si letter C? Why is letter C not correct? Because? Opo. Okay, so the distance in the case of letter C, what is happening here is that actually we are having a negative displacement. So, di ba? Kasi kung mapapansin nyo po, ang nangyayari ay yung from a positive x, what is happening is it is actually moving back towards the origin here in this case. So therefore, hindi rin siya pwede. And then finally, letter E. Bakit hindi pwede si letter E? Okay, so again, in this case, what we have is similar to the situation ng sa ano, what is actually happening here is you have actually negative acceleration din to kasi decreasing velocity siya. Diba? So therefore, that's still negative A. Okay? So therefore, when doing an exercise like this, it should be that when you are asking your students to do something like this, even if they do get the correct answer, the thing is, please ask them, why are these not correct? Okay? Because that is one way of determining whether or not they have an understanding of the way motion graphs are supposed to work. Okay. So let's move on. Okay, now this time, let's look at this particular graph here. And ito po, na graph na to. So this is a particular graph where supposedly ang nangyari dito is you have an object and what happens is the object is rolling. The object is rolling and this creates this particular graph. So what we will do is we are going to show you the actual simulation for that. And then we are going to look at it from the sandali lang po ha. Okay, so this one. So this is the simulation for that particular graph. And what happens is shown here below. So here you can see it says, sandali lang po. Sandali lang po, nasa baba kasi. Okay. Here it says, a patted golf ball, not shown to scale, rolls on a green. So therefore, we have a golf ball. So meron po tayo ay isang golf ball. And what we say is that a black curtain blocks your view of the ball. So ito po yung black curtain. This is the black curtain. But otherwise, does not interfere with the ball's motion. So what is happening is you are supposed to analyze the velocity versus time graph for the ball and you are asked to describe the terrain of the green behind the curtain that blocks your view. So ano kaya yung itsura ng pinagdaanan ng golf ball na gumawa ng graph na yon? So let's play the animation. Sandali lang. Okay, and please allow me to remove muna yung ating mga notations. Okay, and then let's play. Okay, so if I play this, you see the golf ball, and then what happens is it will generate that particular graph. So therefore, what we have is that particular graph. Okay, so here you can see in the graph that what we have is velocity versus time. So balik na po tayo doon sa ating board. Here in the graph, what we have is velocity versus time. Ito po. And what is happening is, ito yung velocity, ito yung time, and then what you will notice please is from point A to B, katulad ng graph natin kanina, the golf ball has a constant velocity. But from point B to C, the golf ball experiences a deceleration, and then from point C to D, the golf ball experiences a constant velocity. And then from D to E, the golf ball experiences a acceleration again. And then from E to F, the golf ball experiences a constant velocity again. So, ilalagay po natin dito ang ating observations. Ano po ang acceleration ng ball natin sa A to B? A to B. Ano po yung acceleration ng ating ball? Okay, so in this case, acceleration is actually equal to 0 kasi nga constant yung velocity. B to C, ang acceleration natin ay B to C naman. Okay, it's negative. And then C to D, 0. Okay? And then D to E, positive. Okay, so may mga sumasagot din po tayo sa ano. Thank you sa FB Live. And then E to F, zero. Okay. So ngayon ang question, ano kayang pwedeng maging itsura ng terrain na that will create this particular figure? So although I suggest that you give this one to your students as an exercise ng mahaba-habang panahon, in our case, hindi natin siya pahahabain yung misteryo kung paano to na-derive na graph na to. So if we go back to our animation here, and what we do is we remove the cover. We remove the cover from the ano yan, the black box from the ano. What you will see, please, is actually here comes our ball, first exhibiting constant velocity, and then because it has to climb up the terrain, it will now experience the negative acceleration. It will decelerate, mag-slow down siya kasi kailangan niyang umakyat. And then, dahil flat yung top, it will have a constant velocity at the top. Upon reaching here, what happens is now it will start increasing its distance, its velocity. So, positive yung acceleration, and therefore, towards the finish. Okay po? Pero po, ang importante syempre ay yung interpretation ng ating mga estudyante ng graph na to. So, we have provided that particular interpretation of the graph dito po sa ating figure. Okay? So, I hope you will be able to use this. I have placed the site that you can use for this particular exercise.